Hello, I'm Dave Brisco, and this is my 2003 BMC 514 Hooligan chop. I started a motorcycle paint company around 2003, and one of the really cool things was I had a lot of customers and friends that were riding, so decided I needed to get a motorcycle. So around 2007, I started looking, was looking for something kind of stripped down, something small, really kind of a bar hopper. I really wasn't planning on, doing a bunch of long distance riding. It was really just going to be hang out, go to some bike rallies and ride a few times a year, but just something real cool and stripped down. So I actually found this bike used. It was a couple years old, hardly no miles on it, from a guy in St. Louis. Had been looking for a couple of Harleys and had looked around, but this was the bike I thought I liked. The guy wanted a little bit more money than I had cash. So the crazy part of this whole story is sometimes things just happen because they're meant to be. So this bike, I kind of fondly call it quad nines. And the reason I call it quad nines is the day after I found it online and talked to the owner, we were kind of negotiating price. I was a few $1,000s short of having the cash to buy it. So that night I actually went to the casino, and at the time I was playing a lot of Texas Hold'em. And I sat down at a Texas Hold'em table and bought in. And it was a terrible night. Like literally every hand I would have a great hand and get beat. So first hand I had like trips and got beat with a straight. The next hand I had a straight, I got beat with a higher straight. The next hand after that I had a flush and I got beat with a higher flush. So it was like crazy. And I was really frustrated at that time. So like 4 hands in, I'd lost about $200 already. So I throw another couple $100 on the table, rebuy in. The next hand, I get nines in the hole. And the flop comes out 997. So I'm holding 4 of a kind. And dude, I'm like, I'm gonna play this really cool. I'm going to slow play it. So the bet comes around and I just do a small bet. And the guy after me bets like $150. And so, on the inside, I'm smiling. And then I go around the table, another guy calls the $150. So I call the $150. And the next card comes out, and it's an 8. So the flop was 997. Now there's an 8 out there. And the guy next to me goes all in. And then the guy around the table goes all in. So I've got to go all in because I'm sure I've got the winner, right? So so now that we're all in, they say, okay, flip the cards up. So I've got 4 nines. And the guy that's next to me, there's no way he can win. He's already out. The next guy, actually, if he gets a 6 of spades, he would get a straight flush. The only card in the whole deck that could beat my quad nines is a 6 of spades. And guess what? The 6 of spades comes out. And he beats me. And I've had it. But the whole table erupts. And I'm like, so all you guys are like rooting against me here? And they're like, no, you just won the grand jackpot. And like, what do you mean? They said, they have a deal here that's called a bad beat. If you've got 4 of a kind or higher and get beat with that, they bring $10,000 to the table and distribute it to the table. He said, but you're going to get the monster share of that. You're going to get $6,000. And then we're going to split the rest of it between the rest of us. But we all win because you got beat with that. So that's the story of how I was able to basically the next day go and buy this motorcycle. And I always thought if I ever was going to put any kind of a name on it or paint it, that I'd have to put quad nines in there somewhere because that's the story of how I got the bike.
That's awesome, dude. So it would have been worse if you had won because you wouldn't have made as much money.
I would have only got like $3,000.
So you made double.
So what they did was they brought out $6,000, or they brought $10,000 total for the whole table cash. I got 6. The guy that beat me got 3. The guy that beat me gave the dealer. He tipped the dealer the entire pot. There was probably $700 in the pot. And then everyone else at the table got $100.
Okay.
Or something like that. But what
Right.
split the rest of the 1,000 was how many people was at the table. It was $1,000, and they split it equally. So, and it was something I didn't even know that it was going on.
Right.
So I was like, what the heck? So I basically played 5 hands, lost all 5 hands, but won $6,000.
Yeah. And that's a hell of a way to make it out. Okay. Is this pretty much, aside from the paint and the bars, have you done anything else, you know, that modification wise, any motor work, anything like that?
Really, you know, the seat. So the seat was made by a friend of mine, James Carter. So he's very well known for making custom motorcycle seats. We did that to really get the bike where it would fit me. The guy that I bought it from was like 6'2", and so when I first got the bike, from the way the seat set, I couldn't even really get to the controls. So you know, we sized the bike to me. We took the bike. He actually kind of did some measurements, made the seat to fit me. So that was one of the first things we did. The other stuff is really a lot of just custom touches, either polished parts. You know, I would say almost everything's been replaced at some point. The headlight, the mirrors, a lot of chrome on the engine. So every time if I needed to change a starter, stock starter goes off, chrome starter goes back on. So really tried to pretty much chrome or polish anything. The Mikuni carburetor, I took the factory Mikuni off, replaced it with a polished out Mikuni. The velocity stack was a custom piece that I found online. I found a machinist that was making custom velocity stacks. So it's a really cool piece, one of my favorite additions to the bike because it's got a real smooth look. You can't really see the fasteners and stuff and the hardware on it. So it's really one of those things that that I just think gives the bike some attitude, some flavor. You know, I've got this really cool 6-shooter gas cap that's kind of the 3-fin, like a IndyCar knockoff style. And I would say it was around, I was trying to think of the year, it must have been around 2009 or so. Billy Lane was in town from Choppers Inc. And he was actually selling a lot of his stuff. He was trying to raise some money. He was about to go to court and he had some legal fees. And I was talking to him. I'd gotten his autograph. I'd bought a shirt from him, got his autograph. And we were just chit-chatting. And I said, man, it'd be really cool. I'd like to have something of yours to put on my bike. And he goes, well, what about this? And he walks over to a bike that was sitting over there and pulls the gas cap off and says, I'll sell you this if you want it. So I bought it. And so I've always got this cool 6-shooter Billy Lane. If you look inside the bullets, it says Choppers Inc. on it. And that's an authentic off of one of Billy's personal bikes that I was able to add to this and give it just a little bit of a flavor. And most people don't know that story. You know, the people that were with me at the time, and it's not something that I talk about too much, but it's a cool piece and it's something I really like about the bike that gives it its own style.
Do you have any cool riding stories of this bike?
So, you know, probably the most notorious story of riding this bike was probably the time that I laid it over. So I was riding with being just a friend. We were out riding together, and you know, we were out riding some back roads and having some fun. It was really just a nice day, and but it had rained the weekend before. So we were on some country roads. They were all paved, but there were a lot of dirt roads that kind of ran across. So we were taking some turns, and I was probably 10 or 15 miles over what the recommended curb speed. And I happened to look off to the side to look at the trees or something. And when I looked back, I realized that there were rocks in the middle of the turn, and it was a very sharp turn. And that I had 2 options, and one option was to try to keep the bike straight up, which I was going to run off in the ditch on the other side of the corner, or try to make the curve. So, but I pretty much knew I was going down, one way or the other. I went ahead and tried to lean it in, and of course it low-sided. The bike slid about 30 feet, and it slid off into the ditch. I rolled about 4 times and then jumped up on my feet. Went and pulled the bike out of the ditch. Had a little bit of road rash, you know, but had to take some bungee cords and bungee some things together. But I rode it home. I rode it about another probably 40 miles, and got it home. But that's when I started redoing the bike. So that was the beginning of buy everything chrome that I could buy. So changed the tank, changed the mirrors, changed the bars, changed a lot of stuff on the bike, and that was really my excuse to say, okay, this bike's going to get a redo, and that's when I went from the gloss black to the flat black finish on it. So I would just say, you know, I've had this bike for almost 20 years. So obviously it's not my only bike now, only because a lot of those friends that I started riding with almost 20 years ago started wanting to do long distance rides. And this bike rides really good for a hardtail, but I did a couple of rides where we did like 300, 350 miles in a day. And so a couple of those will change your mind real quick about how much time you want to spend on a hardtail on a long distance ride. So I did go ahead and get a soft tail, and so now I put a lot of miles on that bike. So this bike still pretty much plays the role of kind of in-town bar hopper, you know, go to some bike nights and things like that. You know, I'm not opposed to taking it for a longer ride, but I do have a bike that's more suited for that. What I dig about this bike, though, is exactly the reason that I bought it, and it's the attitude. This it's got a RevTech 88 Evo motor, and anybody who knows an Evo motor knows that you're going to feel it rumbles, it shakes. You know you're sitting on a motorcycle when you're sitting on this. You know, it's a hardtail, so you feel the bumps. I kind of like that. There's kind of a hardcore feeling about when you're riding a bike like that. You know you're on a motorcycle. Right? My soft tail's great, but it's really like I sometimes wonder if I'm on a, you know, it's just really nice. It rides smooth. It's internally balanced. Just everything that this one's not, that one is. So it's real nice sometimes just to get on this bike and feel it, feel the road, feel the bike rumble. You know, you have to tighten up your mirrors every once in a while. Parts rattle off of the thing. But as a kid, I always felt like that's what Harley Davidson was all about, right? That's what choppers and motorcycles was all about, that rumble and that feel and that ride and that attitude. And so there's a lot to be said, I guess, for the way I feel about having the attitude, and I think this bike has that attitude. Okay. All right. Old school choke.
That's cool.
Loud pipes save lives.